They weren't just footprints in the snow. They were everywhere, across fields, over rooftops, through solid walls, fences, haystacks, even crossing the frozen Esche River. No breaks, no meandering, just one continuous line of hoof-like prints, as if something marched across Devon without ever stopping to breathe. Whatever it was, didn't follow the rules of this world. On the bitterly cold night of February 8, 1855, a heavy snowstorm swept across the English countryside, coating the region in an unbroken sheet of white. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving Devon silent, still, and buried under deep snow. But when the townspeople of Topsham awoke that morning, they didn't find the usual peaceful winter scene. They found tracks, not animal tracks, not human tracks, something else. John Leach, a baker in Topsham, was the first to report them. Around 5:30 a.m., he opened his shutters and froze. Across his backyard, cutting in a perfect, ruler-straight line, was a trail of hoof-like impressions in the fresh snow-sharp cloven and spaced evenly about 8 inches apart. Each print measured roughly 4 inches long, but what chilled him most wasn't the shape, it was the way they moved. The trail led from the woods behind his home, across the yard, then climbed the side of his shed up. The vertical wall-land continued on the snow-covered roof. After that, the tracks simply vanished into thin air. Within hours, dozens more reports came flooding in, from Exmouth to Dawlish to Gnuth to Crediton, and beyond. Villagers were discovering the exact same phenomenon. Identical hoof prints, same shape, same spacing, same direction, no randomness, no animal behavior, and they weren't just on the ground. The tracks appeared on rooftops, high stone walls, church steeples, haystacks, drain pipes, and narrow ledges. They crossed frozen rivers, passed through locked gardens, and in some cases entered one side of a building and exited the other with no damage to walls or windows. Some stretches were traced for over 100 miles, uninterrupted, with no signs of a creature stopping, slipping, or slowing down. No animal could do that. No person would, and not a single soul saw or heard anything. In Dawlish, a local vicar wrote in his journal that no known beast could travel such terrain without pause. In Togmouth, another priest refused to ring the chapel bell that Sunday, telling his congregation, "The town has been visited by something unholy." It was around this time the press gave the event its infamous name, the Devil's Footprints. The fear spread like frost across the moors. Some villagers locked their homes and refused to leave. Others grabbed lanterns and followed the trails as far as they could, only to find them ending in open fields, or worse, leading straight to their own doorsteps. One terrified mother in Tatness claimed she saw the tracks come up to her child's window and stop. The snow below remained undisturbed, but her daughter, just 6 years old, said she heard tapping on the glass that night. Skeptics attempted to calm the hysteria. Some blamed escaped donkeys or goats. Others floated wild theories: badgers hopping in a line, balloons dragging horse-shaped stamps, or even kangaroos let loose from a traveling menagerie. None of them held up. The prints were too consistent, too high, too long. Badgers and goats can't climb chimneys or walk across narrow rooftops. Balloons couldn't have floated through a blizzard with such mechanical accuracy. And kangaroos, this was rural England in 1855. No one had even seen a kangaroo. The strangest accounts, though, came from those who tried to follow the tracks. Thomas Cavell, a seasoned trapper near Woodbury Common, set out alone to investigate. A skeptic by nature, he believed it was all local hysteria and set out early with snowshoes and a hunting rifle. He returned that evening, pale, shaking, and speechless. He refused to say what he'd seen, but his neighbor, who spoke with him that night, said Cavell kept repeating one sentence: "It was behind me, but it never stepped." Cavell left Devon the very next day. In Exmouth, Reverend James Tucker stood atop his church tower just after sunrise. He'd heard the stories but didn't believe them, not until he looked down and saw the hoof prints scaling the steep-angled roof of his church. There were no ladders, no broken slates, no smudges or signs of climbing, just perfectly spaced, 4-inch hoof marks, ascending the structure as if gravity didn't apply. Reverend Tucker didn't open his chapel doors that day, but perhaps the most disturbing account came from a farmhouse outside. The family inside had been asleep when, just after midnight, they were jolted awake by a loud clatter on the roof. The father, assuming it was ice breaking loose, stepped outside with a lantern. The snow was untouched all around except for a single path of prints, which had landed on the roof, crossed the ridge, and came down the other side. Then the man saw it. The hoof prints led directly to their front door. They didn't pass it. They didn't circle the house. They stopped, right at the threshold, waiting. From that night forward, the youngest daughter claimed to hear tapping at her window, always after it snowed. Slow, deliberate, like claws gently testing the glass. By spring, the family moved away, left the farm behind. They never returned. As word of the devil's footprints spread across England, the nation's newspapers seized on the story. Sensational headlines blamed everything from demons to witches, pranksters to secret government experiment. But while the press argued, the villagers stayed quiet. They'd seen what they'd seen. Theories dried up, the snow melted, and as quickly as it arrived, the fear faded into folklore. But not for everyone. Many residents kept sketches of the prints hidden in drawers. Some drew maps of the paths through their villages. Others kept their stories private only, speaking of them in whispers. Decades later, when the snow returned. And then, over 150 years later, it happened again. In 2009, just on the edge of Devon, a man walking his dog after a winter storm stopped cold in his backyard. There, pressed into the untouched snow, was a line of hoofprints, perfectly spaced, 4 inches long, marching in a single file trail from the trees, up to his back door. They didn't go beyond it. They didn't wander. They just stopped precisely at the doorstep. The man didn't take photos, didn't contact the media, didn't try to understand. He simply packed a bag and left. To this day, no one has offered a proven explanation. Scientists call it a historic mystery. Skeptics say it was mass panic in an age without answers. Believers say something passed through Devon that night, something not of this world. But even skeptics agree the prints were real. The reports were consistent, and whatever left them had no known origin, no physical limitations, and no interest in being seen. So the next time snow falls heavy and silent, check your windows, look at your roof, and maybe don't open the door. Because whatever left those prints in 1855 might not be finished walking yet. The prints didn't stop at the edge of the forest or at the base of a wall. They stopped at people's doors. So here's the question. If something with hooves came all that way, what was it waiting for at the threshold? Whatever it was, it walked across Devon without rest, without reason, and without being seen. And if it returned once, it might come again. So the next time it snows, check your doorstep. What would you do if something left prints at your door? Tell us in the comments.